Alright, so on today's agenda is impression gears on a Mark Gandy 2200. Now, this is the impression roller, so this is what your print cylinder and printing plate will rest on and pinch your substrate, which is what will print on it. So this is a very important roller, and this movement is very bad. So we can easily rock it and rock the gearbox there. Okay, so see how that moves? That's not what we're concerned about. What we are concerned about is how much we can move without rocking that gear. It doesn't look like a lot, but that is a huge amount for registration issues on a press. First, on a brand new one, that's it. That's all the movement we get. Okay, so the reason that we do this is, let's just pretend that this here is your drive gear and this here is your impression gear. And if we look, you can see how they're kind of square teeth and they should fit really close. They should mesh together really, really well. But after years and years, we start to wear this surface out and this surface out. And we make this gap bigger. Right? Just over and over and over again until these teeth get really skinny. Now we've got, instead of just this tiny bit of movement between the gears here, we've got this big movement here between the gears. And what that's going to do is when you're trying to lay down a consistent image, like you're trying to put this rectangle and then print this, a different color directly on top, you're going to get issues like this where it's not quite lined up right. You know, instead of it being perfectly square like this, your next image is going to be like that. You're going to have registration issues. Using a 7/16 wrench, I'm going to go ahead and crack this bolt loose from the drive gear. Take the bolt and lock washer off. Usually your main washer will stick because of grease. Okay, if you notice, there's this slot right here for a key, and there is a set screw to lock that key in place. So you got to get that loose before you can pull your gear off. Now obviously I'm not going to be able to get an Allen wrench in there very well, so what you can do is press this off. You can actually reach through and grab the drive shaft here. You spin the press forward, actually backward, sorry, and it'll bring the gear clockwise. And then you can reach it with a 5/32 Allen wrench. Now that you've loosened up that set screw, you can get behind here with a screwdriver, pry it off. Now, just get it loose, because you do not want to scratch your impression roller. This is such an important surface that we don't want to make any scratches or marks. So grab it with your hand and just gently pull it, and it'll drop out right before it hits. But if you yank on it, you'll dent this up and you'll make that roller damaged. So check for the key. The key is not there. The key is here. So we'll leave it there. That's where we want it to be. And this gear is actually going to get thrown away. It's worn out. Now normally, the only other step is you come out to the outside bearing carrier, and you take these 3 bolts out and you pull this carrier out. And it lets this bearing drop. And then you just finagle it out, replace your gear, and put the roller back in. The problem with this one is it's a very special, unique version of this press because it has helical gears as well as straight cut gears, which is kind of rare. So these slant cut gears here, these are your helical gears, and they are much smoother and provide way less bouncing and what we call gear marks in your print than a straight cut gear. like we have on the outboard. As you can see, they go straight across. Normally what you have is, and what I'm currently doing a conversion on, is you have no gear. So when you pull this cover out, this is the inside of cover, here's the outside. When you pull this out, there's a bearing inside, it drops free. This whole hole is exposed, and you can just pull this roller out of its bearing holder on that side to this side, and then just snake it out. Really easy. The problem is when you have this gear attached to your impression roller, you can't snake it out. You have to take this whole head apart in order to get this roller out to do a gear change. Okay, next is we're going to take the plate lift cylinder and unbolt it from this plate of the, basically the head. And then this plate will be able to slide up and out of this part. So we'll just go ahead and take that out after we get this disconnected. Okay, it's important to note, you never want to strike this. This is such an important surface. So when you're loosening this, I always have my knuckles here, so I will hurt my hand well before I ever do damage to this cylinder, because if you hit with this hard knurled handle steel, or any steel, even if it's just perfectly smooth and round, you'll leave dents in this and you'll destroy the cylinder. It's a very expensive cylinder. So I always make sure that my knuckles are here, so I will hurt my hand well before I ever damage this. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so once you get the cylinder off, it'll pop up, the slide will come down, and then it should come out. Okay, and now we're gonna take this spring mount off the outboard side of the chassis. It's 2 bolts, and then this assembly will pop down a little bit, and we're gonna take this, the spring, and this silver spring support piece here. You'll see when it's apart. Again, I have my hand in the way, or my knuckles in the way, one of the two. Okay, so that's how it came out, and then this little piece sticks up in there. Sometimes this will come out with the spring, sometimes it won't. There's just a little hole right there that it slides up into. But that's how the assembly sits together. It's just a little insert that fits inside the spring, and then the spring fits on similarly on the mount. This pin is mostly used as a visual reference. It also works as a safety. We're gonna go ahead and tap that out really quick just to help us out. Next, we're gonna take our outer impression adjustment block off with using these 2 bolts right here. Next, we're going to take this cap off. with a tug inward. Should be able to get a little bit of a gap. So then get a screwdriver in and just gently pry on it. Make sure you push it back in so your inside bearing is fully engaged so you don't drop your cylinder. And then just gently pry that out. Okay, so at this point, the only thing keeping this head in place is this hinge point, which I want to talk about in just a second, because it's really cool, and this clamshell. So we're going to loosen this and slide it over, and that's going to get this nice and loose. And then the only thing left is these 3 bolts for this hinge point, and I'll show you that in just a second. So this hinge point here, this is actually a receiver for a bearing for an anti-lock roller. It goes here, and there's a matching one here on this side. So not only does it receive this bearing in this perfect slot, but this is actually more than a half circle on the inside, creating a hinge point that locks this mechanism in. Because if it was a half circle, it could just slide this way, but it's actually more, it's more than half a circle, so it locks it in place, and that creates the hinge point that this operates on, and it's the same point that this anti-lock roll goes into, which is really cool. So we're gonna go ahead and take these 3 bolts out and knock this forward, and the plate will be able to move. Now, this whole plate can move. So what we need to do here is lift this plate up over this air cylinder. Like so. Like that. And now you have just enough room to slide the cylinder out with the gear there. So we'll grab it, pop it out, let's whip it out. Then we're going to take this off because we don't need it no more, and we're going to replace that with a new one.
Rainbows in the dark. I like lots of shit in the jar. So girl sitting over there in the chair, right?
Right.
And a loofah. These damn.
And now we put the head back together. Start by pushing your joint back in. You got to get it square, so maybe use a mallet. All right, with our hinge point slash interlock acceptor bolted back in, we'll go ahead and pop this plate back on its hinge point. As you can see, it's more than a half circle, so you have to get it lined up, just like a shaft in a hole. Back on, and we're back to hinging. Then we're going to put our adjuster block back on. Next, I've gone ahead and put the spring assembly back in. Now we can see we've got a moving head again. So we're going to put the slide onto the plate lift cylinder, which is right here, and put it back in place, and then we're going to put the covers on. Okay, and then we'll bolt that on. We're going to go ahead and put the large guard on first, using the flathead screws. Set it in place. Now that we're this far, we're going to go ahead and push our clamp shell back over, and it's supposed to push up against these covers. Next, we're going to put the safety pin back in. It goes down in this hole here. It doesn't need to be super tight, it just needs to sit all the way flush. Okay, next we'll go ahead and put our visual reference pin back in. It goes in this hole here. Tough to do with just one hand. There we go. Get it kind of with your thumb, and then I like to just give it a couple of taps with a wrench. Perfect. Okay, so you guys have seen all the work it took to get these impression rollers out of this particular press for this conversion. Now I'm about to show you how easy it should be to get them in and out. Now that this conversion is complete, we're going to go ahead and put the impression roll back in with the new gear. See that side floats, and then we just take our cap. If we go on this side, you can see how it grabs that bearing, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and smack that on there. That's how she sits. That's how easy it is. Normally it's like 2 minutes. Then all I have to do is put that gear back on. We'll use another fresh gear. Again, you don't want to scratch up your impression rollers, just slide it on. Your set screw is your key joint. Give her a couple little glove taps. Put your washer and nut back on. Tighten up the set screw. Now we've got no play. Nice and solid connection. Very nice.